everyone, and welcome to the official online launch event because technically David had an in-person one, whatever, celebrating David Sandner's new book, His Unburned Heart, from Raw Dog Screaming Press. And hopefully I pronounced everything correctly, which I have a habit of not doing well. You wouldn't see, I'm a writer, not a speaker for a reason. But David writes weird things often in genre. He's a member of the SFWA and the HWA. He's also an English professor at California State University, Fullerton, where he teaches creative writing, popular genre literatures, fantasy, sci-fi, and horror, and Romanticism, an era of revolution in poetry in early 19th century Britain. His creative and scholarly work has been published in magazines, journals, anthologies, and collections. He's also been nominated for a Mythopoeic Award. Did I say that okay? We don't struggle with that one. That's
That
a
works.
word. On the fantastic. Besides all that, David is the author and editor of scholarly books and a co-written novella. He builds websites on the fantastic, including one on Philip K. Dick's last 10 years in Orange County, California, another on the literary influence of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, and the newest for the Zines to the Future project and exhibit. And his next book after this that's coming out is Egyptian Motherlode. It's coming out in October from Fairwood. So welcome, David.
Hi.
Hi. So, surprise, your students and I have actually been emailing you, and we're going to start off with a pop quiz about Mary Shelley. And if you fail,
Ah,
you have to give all your students A pluses for the next 10 years. So I hope you're ready.
I might be.
Okay.
Okay.
I just looked up general things. I was like, what do I ask about Mary Shelley? When was she born?
Oh,
Ah.
1797.
Yeah. Ooh, dates are hard. Okay, what
Yeah.
year did she die?
Yeah, 1851. Should have lived longer.
Yeah. And when
Yeah.
was Frankenstein written?
Well, written or published? Published in 1818. The
Okay.
inspiration was in 1816, the very famous moment at the Villa
Yeah.
Diodati where Byron had a story compact challenge and
Is
they
it
all
true
were
they all
supposed to
did
write
drugs?
stories. Sure.
Okay. Is
It
it
depends what you mean by
okay,
drugs.
here's another one. If any of your students are too young for this, cover your ears, students. Did she
That'll
actually
work.
lose her virginity on her mother's grave? Was she that
Well,
goth?
maybe. I suspect yes.
Yes, you're like, yeah, she was that kind of a
That's one
goth.
problem with writing something that's historically based is there's a number of decisions I have to make. Whereas like in a class, I can say I wasn't there, I don't know. But she'd spent a lot of time at her mother's grave because her mother died. Her mother, Mary Wollstonecraft, the great feminist writer, uh, died after giving birth to her 10 days after her birth. And so she never knew her. And so she read all her works and she communed with her at the gravesite. And Percy Shelley, who also admired Mary Wollstonecraft and her dad as well, William Godwin, they did seem to spend a lot of time there and they fell in love and eventually they would run away, though he was married at the time, to Paris and to France and beyond. So did they? Yeah. As a writer, I'm
Probably.
going to go with yeah, probably.
Probably.
Because
Um,
it was pretty wild time and they did some wild things. And so that was probably one of them. And she felt
so
very comfortable there. She was a it
yeah,
was
Mary
a safe
Shelley, the
place.
original big titty goth girlfriend, confirmed by a professor. So
Is that what I
everyone,
said?
yep, absolutely. I'm allowed
Absolutely.
to put words in your mouth. Eliza says no one will ever be as goth as Mary Shelley. Jennifer says we can all just aspire. Yeah, it's true. She was
Right?
the
Yes.
original big titty goth girlfriend, as confirmed by David on camera. Okay, now for the official event after I surprised you with that. You can tell you're used to students just throwing curveball questions at you because you
I
didn't even blink. You're like, oh yeah, here we go.
no, admitting what you don't know is part of being a professor. That always surprises them. It's like, I don't know. Look it
I
up.
mean, yeah,
But
that's true.
I do know some things. Yeah.
Okay, so we kind of did your introduction, and do you want to? Well, actually, we'll get into more questions about your passion for Mary Shelley. We're gonna do our first giveaway, actually.
Oh,
Yeah,
Okay.
that's exciting. Everyone do the drums. Do the drums in chat. You know what I'm talking about. David, you also do drums.
Is that
Be like a little fake
tap it
drum.
back?
Yeah. I'm
Tap
gonna
it on
hit
a
my
thing.
wheel here.
So you yell out, no whammies. Is that the
Okay.
big
Yeah.
money? No
Okay.
whammies.
Big money, big money, big money. I haven't watched that show. That's like Price is Right, right?
Something like that. Been a long time
Okay.
since I watched any game shows.
Let's see. Okay, I'm gonna say this wrong. Mita Mahato?
I need
Mita Mita Mahato? I think you're here. Oh yeah, I see your
yeah.
name. Hello, Mita. Congrats.
We went to
Yay.
graduate school together. This is like
Ooh.
getting people from different parts of my life. This is like, this is your life. So
Isn't
okay.
that exciting though when that happens? Well, congrats, Mita. After the event, I'll put you in touch unless you're already emailing, in which case you don't really need me. But I'll still do it anyways, just out of habit, because then I have an email trail at least. Mita, I do want to know, was David a good student? Or was David like the rebel, the class clown,
Oh,
the person to keep an eye on?
me and I were both part of a romantic reading group, which did some reading of romantic stuff, including Mary Shelley, of course, from that era. There may have been some drinking involved too, because the
Oh,
romantic poets, to get it right,
you
as you
got to be
already
drunk.
mentioned, you might have to sometimes.
No, that's fair. That's fair. Mita says it was the highlight of grad school.
Yeah.
Or maybe you were the highlight of grad school.
Oh no, I'm sure it was the romantic reading group.
It could have been both, you know? Maybe you're just a gem to have around, David. So we're going to do a little exclusive interview. This is always very fun.
Uh,
Now, keep in mind, my dear audience, you can join in. At the end, we're going to have a Q&A. So if you want to ask more questions about how much of a big titty goth girlfriend Mary Shelley was, just save those questions till the end and we'll have a little Q&A and we can just interrogate David until this hour is up. So it's not a big deal. Be prepared, David.
yeah, I know. I've not. I don't know what to say about that.
Okay, so first question, will you tell us about his unburned heart as spoiler-free as possible?
Yes, although there's things that history has to say about it. So this is about his unburned heart is about Percy Shelley is the one whose heart is unburned. And that gets given away a little bit given away in the opening scene, which is what I will read for this, which is
Ooh.
the funeral pyre, the very famous. There's a painting of it, the funeral pyre of Percy Shelley, who died off the coast of Italy, and they were not allowed to move his body because of possible contagion rules, and so they decided to burn it on the shore when it finally came ashore. And his heart didn't burn, is what everybody who was there who wrote something about it, because it was a very famous moment, says, though we don't know what they mean by that. So what I mean his heart didn't burn, but apparently not. So it's a very strange moment in the historical record. And we know that Mary Shelley ends up with the heart. That part is true, but not immediately. We also know the historical record says that it ends up with her publisher, who's also there. You'll meet the characters all in the first scene. You know, one of them is Byron, of course, who always makes stories better because he just starts ramping things up. Whatever's happening, he makes it stranger. And Trelawney, their friend, who kind of wanted to be a pirate, I guess, and is hanging out with them, and Leigh Hunt, who's come down to publish their works because they're all down in Italy. And he claims the heart, but he does not end up with it. And that's really the story revolves around that. Mary Shelley is, of course, grief-stricken, but things change as Leigh Hunt takes the heart, and she has to find ways to figure out what she wants to do next about that.
So it's kind of like a love story or a grief
Yes,
love
a
story.
goth one, yeah.
Yeah, a goth one. Confirmed. Big titty goth girlfriend. Again, 2024
Yes.
confirmed by the academic side of things.
And she does some pretty strange things to make it happen. So
Ooh, exciting.
yeah, yes,
Can you tell us the inspiration? Like, obviously you're a big fan of history and especially Mary Shelley.
yes,
What made you decide to write this part of her life into a novella?
yeah. I mean, I have behind me I put up this thing which was part of an exhibit called the Frankenstein meme, where with students, we built this huge database, which is still up online. It ends at 2018, which to ask me about when it was published, 1818. It's the 200-year anniversary of Frankenstein coming out. And we looked at works influenced by Frankenstein over the past 200 years. So there's an online database, which if you come to my website, you can connect over to it. And they put that up. And that led to my recent book. So I put up that one. Whoa, there we go.
The Afterlife of
The
Frankenstein.
Afterlife of Frankenstein, which is the first 100 years, because a lot of people seem to know that since the movie, the whale movie, it's had a lot of popular culture cachet. And I'm like, it's had a lot of attention given to it long before that. And I sort of set out to prove that with the Afterlife of Frankenstein. So I've been working and thinking a lot about Mary Shelley and done other academic work on her, and wanted to tell more stories about other parts of her life than Frankenstein. There's a lot more to her, and I think she's gotten a lot of attention for that. It's a very important book in our culture, but there's more. There's a lot more that goes on in her life and other things that she writes, and I'm really interested in those. And so it began to try to get closer to telling a story that she tells about some strange things in her life and trying to understand it, like Percy Shelley's heart not burning. So
Do you have plans to write more Mary Shelley centric books in the
yeah,
future?
this was part of a novel. It no longer is. It got too big. I had justified heading over into this strangeness as like it's telling us things about Mary Shelley. So it was a kind of character development in the middle of this novel that's really about something else. And then it just kept getting bigger and bigger and stranger, and more things were happening in it. And I'm like, oh no, this is not like a chapter in a book. This is a novella. What do I do now? So luckily Raw Dog Screaming came to pick it up and is now publishing it. And so that part's been taken out, but the novel continues, called The Frankenstein Singularity. And
Ooh,
it's a very strange book, like this one, with Mary Shelley at the heart of it. So I'm working on that. I hope that will come out following this not too long. So
perfect. Well, so you're obviously really passionate about Mary Shelley. How did that start? Like, what got you so interested?
I I don't know. I mean, people always like Frankenstein, so I've always liked Frankenstein. But working more on her, I don't know. I'm obviously in some way or another. She really resonates for me in the way she approaches things, and who she is and what she's done, and that all these questions continue to circulate, and I feel very defensive for her too. There's all the did she write Frankenstein, which must have been Percy Shelley who wrote Frankenstein, and seems very obviously not. If you know their work, especially that she wrote other works, and we have things to compare it to, but those questions still come up, to which the really simple answer is misogyny. But and so I feel really her anxieties about it, though, the grief that she had to go through. I just began to know more and more about her life, and it's interesting. It's amazing what she manages to do is amazing as a woman in that time period, the things that are laid on her. Once Percy Shelley dies, she's no longer going to inherit, and her children won't inherit because there were earlier children, this estate and these loans they took out that Percy Shelley took out because he thought he was going to inherit. And so she's got debts and problems, and it's hard to deal with Percy Shelley's family. And her father is also out of money and needs help. And a lot of the work that she does and the writing that she does and everything I find her kind of heroic, and I find her life strange and interesting. And so there's a lot to say.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. It sounds like there's a lot of history and unpack. I personally I
Yeah,
don't know a ton about her besides like the
no,
odd fact,
right.
like
People know some odd,
the
yes,
graveyard
the
fact.
gravestone, the
Yeah.
the story compact. They might know this unburned heart business.
Yeah.
Yes, but there is a lot more, and all the characters you meet, like all the ones I'll read, brief in the brief thing I have tonight, are all real. And in this piece, everybody's real, including people that you don't get to meet that, I like wish people would meet. There's like Mrs. Mason, who knew Mary Wollstonecraft, Mary Wollstonecraft had been her governess, and now she's a much older woman, and Mary Shelley meets her in Italy and talks to her, and she plays a role in this story, along with all the others. And I love kind of bringing these people in from history that seem amazing, and have had sort of amazing lives too, and kind of intersect through Mary Shelley's life. So there's a
Yeah.
lot to unpack.
So obviously, as this book is based on like real life events, do you face any challenges writing a fictional account of these events and people?
Yes, although I mean, mainly the history I find really liberating. There's so many gaps and spaces that it's not hard that there's to leave parts where I just have to make it up and make it fiction. Um, I don't find that difficult, and it sends the story in strange directions when I see where the character pops up again, and I have to account for the fact that she comes here or there or anybody else. I have to keep track of it. So I mean, there's the research. I don't find that hard. I enjoy that part. Getting Mary Shelley's voice, now that was a really different matter. I
How did
found
you
that
tackle
really
that?
difficult. I don't know.
You
I
don't,
failed a lot. It was
who
hard.
knows?
Because I thought I wanted to tell this story for a long time. And then I would write things and I'm just like, nope, nope, nope. It's just a lot of that. I was getting really frustrated. And now I've got something that I'm very happy with, feeling like I've found this voice, and now it just speaks, and so I'm able to write it. That's not, as I write on with the novel, that's not the part I'm worried about. I'm sure I can get back to that character and let the character just go on with what it's doing. It's just the rest of keeping it all track. Novels are big things, so that was the hardest part, and I don't want to face it again. I'm glad it's over. I don't know how I got by. It just eventually happened. So
And so I, again, am not like super familiar with the actual like the real life events that happen. How closely does
yeah.
this book follow it?
Well, this novella is true to everything, and everybody you meet is at least how I see them, according to the historical record. Other people might disagree. In fact, I'm sure they do, judging by how other people have written about them. But I'm basing it on, I'm not, I look at them and I see things about how they relate to Mary Shelley, and I'm basing it all on that. And for this novella, everybody you meet is real, even the dog. Lord Byron's dog plays a key role in this.
Best
And
character, honestly,
I
MVP.
know. I love it. That's like an extra bonus right there. It's like when a movie has a dog, that's a good thing. That's a dog. And it's Byron's dog, Moretto. And it really is put on the top of the stairs and told to keep Leigh Hunt's children away from coming upstairs to bother Byron when he's writing. It's like I didn't have to make up any of that. It's all just true, which is fantastic. But in the novel, it's different. There's a lot of real characters, but it's an alternate history, so it goes off the rails, and that includes the characters and everything that happens in it. So it's a much bigger and stranger thing. But this one is strange, but everyone is real, and the historical record would at least accord with this. I lied, but I didn't undermine the historical record. I may have
Okay.
undermined reality itself or something, but not the historical record.
And what did you enjoy most writing of
Oh,
his unburned heart? I
it,
struggle with that word for some reason.
it's probably the reverse of what was so hard. I wanted to do something with Mary Shelley in it, and so getting to do that and returning to that for the novel is a real treat. So I'm hoping that this works out. It's going really well. The selling of it has gone really well. And so if I can get a novel out and that goes well, I would enjoy spending more time with Mary Shelley, um, and the adventures she's having. So I'm rooting for her in these in these books too, in her sometimes nervous but really quite brilliant self. Um, I I
That's
like it.
fair. That's
Yeah.
fair. What are you hoping your readers are going to take away from it?
I hope they get interested in more of Mary Shelley's other parts of her life and other things that she's done, other things that she's written, other things she imagined. Um, I know in the novel that Mary Shelley's flying machine, she invented a steam-powered flying machine, which goes somewhat unnoticed in The Last Man, her other science fiction novel. She wrote two science fiction novels, right? and things like that, which are much greater than people have realized and sort of make their way in the book. I hope people, start to see things in it. Like when I start to say, like, I didn't make that up, she made that up, which is really remarkable and gets not noticed. And so bringing things forward from her from her life and the strangeness of it and the things that she did would be fun and great. I mean, I enjoy doing it. So
Okay, last
yeah.
question then.
Okay.
As an author, what three writing tips would you
Oh,
give to our viewers today?
yeah. The usual tip, the only one that's, you know, you need to give, which is true, is the just keep writing kind of thing. So that, writing is writing and it's about the art. It's not about anything else. Like I'm enjoying doing this work. Even if other people didn't read it, it's much more fun when they do. I'm enjoying this, going to the other launch thing that I had. Those things are fantastic, but it's the writing itself that's the thing. So you always have to find your way back to that. Since I'm dealing with the Romantic period, there's something I take away from Percy Shelley, who um, called this sort of primordial force that he encountered a daemon. So not exactly a daemon, Daemon. And I think about that a lot in writing when I think about anxieties around writing. So I teach creative writing too, and I try not to make students run away when I start to talk about this strange thing that if you want to write, especially if you want to write something like horror at times, um, there are dark things that come up, and there's a kind of anxiety that you live with about you write something and then you think it's terrible, sucks. Nobody should ever read this.
Don't
I
at
was
me like
really,
that, David.
I know, I was really hoping that would go away the more I wrote, and the answer is nope. It just stays with you. But what I've come to realize, it's this daemon that sits between the imagination or creativity and you, and it's bored and it's a little frustrated and it makes you anxious and it loves to tell you terrible things. It's also the thing that will give you stuff and will lead you in. It's your desire to do well. So your ambition is also your anxiety at the same time. And if you didn't have your ambition, then you would just be like, "Oh, this is great," and give it out to the world, and it would suck. And so it's the very voice that's telling you, "Let's try again, make it better." That's worth having. So a lot of people give up because that voice is telling them stuff, and I'm like, that voice will always be telling you stuff. It's all right. Try to listen to it, and then you try to interest this daemon. It's a really, again, it's bored a lot. It's like a little child. But if you give it problems, it will sometimes solve them for you while you're sleeping, or standing in the shower. That's why that happens. So I advised getting closer to this thing instead of just being frustrated that you write things and you think they suck. So
Yeah, makes sense. You
I think
still
that's
owe
only
us one
two, but
more. Yeah,
I'll leave.
you owe us one
Yes,
more. If you want the
I'm
grade,
out. Those are two. Those are my two
nope,
main
it's
ones.
got to be three.
There's got
You
to
have
be three.
students waiting for the third one.
Well, there's always leave yourself something to write when you walk away, but I'm stealing that from Hemingway, but I found it to be
Yeah, that's
true.
cheating. I'm
It
just
is
kidding.
cheating, but that's
That's
what it's the end of the
plagiarism.
term right now. Send everything through Chat GPT. Yeah,
Oh,
no, that
wow. I can't believe you just said that on camera.
no,
David.
I would, yes, never. It can't write like we can write. There's no worries that it'll ever be creative. It's not. It's machine learning. It's only stealing stuff. But Hemingway was right that you leave off not when you think you've finished, but when just before you think you've finished, because then it really connects to what I was saying before. Because that other part of you will keep writing it and you'll come back and you'll be like, oh, and there'll be things to say. So that's because you can kind of come back and feel like it's at an end page and then you're facing the blank page again, and that can stop you. So that's a way to not do that.
That's fair. Thanks, Hemingway.
Yeah, 2.5.
2.5. We'll give you two and a
Round
half.
up.
That's like a C plus, I guess. We'll
Oh,
give you that one. All right, we'll do our second giveaway then, and it'll be time for
ah,
the live reading, which I know
awesome.
everyone's super excited for.
That'll
Is
be
everyone
good.
excited? I'm seeing no chats.
I
You know I
am.
need attention. I'm a middle child. I've been
I see something
neglected.
in the chats. Now that you're doing that, I can.
Yeah. And I'll share the link to the book. Thank you, Heidi. I appreciate it. Okay, let me spin the wheel
Ah,
here.
Big money,
Da-na-na-na-na-na-na. Yeah, imagine if it was
no
like, I need
whammies.
sound effects or like an actual wheel that I could like spin on camera. That would be good, but I've never pre-planned it that way. Oh,
Oh,
I know this person. It's Eliza Broadbent. Hi, Eliza. Wow,
congratulations.
convenient. You just chatted. Congrats, Eliza. Eliza has, I'm pretty sure, been to every single one of my events. And we are going to be hanging out a ton at Stoker. Yay, Eliza. Congrats. So I've got your info. I'll contact you, of course, after. Super exciting. And this book, yeah, you are my biggest fan, girl. Thank you. So this book is actually out already. It came out, excuse me, I don't remember the date. The
But for
10th,
His
I want to
Unburned Heart,
say.
the ninth.
Shoot, I was one day off. The
Yeah,
ninth, yeah.
Thursday, I was at Barnes and Noble. That was sort of the official launch of the book itself right there. But
Wow,
I mean, we're
rude.
still
This is
just at
your
that
official
moment of,
launch. That was the
yes,
pre-launch.
that
This
was
is
the
the
official
official
pre-launch.
launch.
Okay, yes, of course. Here, the
I'm
official launch.
special.
We're on the 13th. So yeah, well, it's been a whirlwind of a weekend for me. So
Yeah. How was the live event?
fantastic. They ran out of chairs, they ran out of books, they sold
Oh,
them all out. They ran out of both books because they had the afterlife there. And so
that must
that's
have
the way
felt
we like
so
to do it.
good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
burn it
That's
down.
so
So
exciting.
yeah.
Okay, now everyone's been waiting. What you said you're reading the very beginning.
Yes, which takes
Yeah.
you into the problem, which is the heart. So
Yes,
the heart
the
makes an
heart of
appearance.
the
And
problem, you might say.
yes, and there's a historical thing that you can sort of I think you can realize more slowly as you're reading the advantage of reading. So I'm gonna give away something here, but I think it's all right because you learn later about how she pulled this off. The historical record tells us Mary Shelley wasn't allowed to go. That's boring.
Yeah.
So there's a famous painting of this moment, and she's there in the painting because, of course, she is. And they kind of have her in back, and they have these others who you're about to meet closer into the fire of this thing. So I have, yeah, no, I think Mary Shelley's there, but she's in disguise, which happens not unfrequently throughout the 19th century that women dress up
Just
as men.
bamboozling people left,
Yes,
right,
dress
and
up as men
center.
to get places that they want to get to, because if you do, that's what you have to do. And so Mrs. Mason plays a key role in helping her out and all of that kind of stuff. So you learn that's who this voice is, but you sort of knew that already. And this is part of that. You can see what's going on and some of the things. And again, you kind of can think about, but mostly it's the fire and the unburned heart and meeting this thing.
Oh, perfect.
Are you
Have you
ready?
ever dressed up in costume to try to get in somewhere?
Uh,
I
no, I
feel like
dressed
it's
up in
not so
costume for
necessary
Halloween.
anymore.
I always
Yeah,
loved Halloween, but
I feel like there's not really much spaces anymore that you need to dress up to get
to
into.
to get into, yeah,
Yeah.
not
Too
that I
bad. I
would.
mean, they took that from us. They should just deliberately make spaces like not gendered spaces, but just like spaces you have
I
to
know it
dress
wasn't
up like
good
a
for women
bear
at
to
that
get
time
into. Yeah.
that they had to find ways
If you
to
want to get into this organic honey store, you have to dress up convincingly as a
if
bear.
if you want to listen to some of the scientific speeches about vitalism or something at that time, you sort of had to sneak in
Yeah.
usually.
Oh, Heidi makes a good point. Comic-Con. That's true. That's true.
Cosplay.
Cosplay.
Today's
We do have a
cosplay.
place. Today,
Mary Shelley is
today's
cosplaying in this story. That's the
exactly. Today's cosplay was yesteryear's dressing up as a different gender to get into universities.
yes. Or see your husband's funeral pyre. That was a rare one.
Exactly. That's a rare one. I mean, goth girlfriend, OG. All right, hit it with us or hit
Okay.
us with it. You know what I mean.
His Unburned Heart. 16 August 1822, Tuscany. Shelley's body on the pyre smoked, ruptured. Winding light round shadows, the fire moved and snapped and cracked, bright, shivering, shifting, glistening, spitting. Flames flared, yellow, pale green, numinous white, terrifyingly empty. Respiring in the wind off the sea, the fire heaved, staggered, loomed up, intolerable, laughing sharply, coughing smoke into a cerulean sky. The fire reached out to kiss our faces wet with sweat, as if we were its children. But we were nothing before that fire. My husband's funeral pyre on a beach near Via Reggio. Even before the burning, his body had been ruined. corrupted, half-eaten by the sea, with clothes tattered and once flowing hair sparse and dun. Even before he was placed on the funeral pyre atop Trelawney's makeshift iron oven, the dried skin of his corpse had hung loose like an ill-fitting shift, patches sagging or furrowing as the Tuscan soldiers lifted the body from its shallow temporary grave of lime and sand on the narrow beach. When it burned, the skin along the face and legs, brittled by lime, blackened and cracked like parchment from an old book left unread for an age, a book of blasphemies to be put to the torch at last. The flames should have absolved us all, exchanging inevitable decay for nothing, releasing us, but something would not give. I felt I would choke, but not from smoke. His heart, unwrecked, would not. The fire keened in the wind, it barked, roared, whistled, inhabited by some daemon come to honor our dead prophet. When the body had burst into flame, it held shape still for a time, accepting the flames entwining it like a mummy, until the burning cracked the bones, allowing the fire to worm in greedily, and then the inner matter, already unintelligible as organs or muscle, bubbled thickly, sickeningly. And then? What then? Unbearably, his heart would not, at last where there should have been only charred bone. Nothing more, some unknowable remained, more like an ideal thing from his dreams or poetry, as insistent as a conscience. There in the revealed cavity of his cracked chest lay his absurd heart, a dark lump smoking. Unaccountably his heart laid bare on blinding white sand before endless blue on a beach in Viareggio, his heart immutable. Shelley's heart would not burn. There, in the charred lump of his unburned heart, in its impossibility, my story lies. If you will know it, you must know it with the unsayable left in. The excess, like his heart, abides. Trelawney knelt close to the fire, closer even than Byron. Shirtless, dripping sweat from his arms and off his thick beard, he raised his muscled arms in supplication. Shaking, wild-eyed, he seemed to want to throw himself into the flames. It was he who had insisted on burning the corpse. Reckless, high-spirited, a sailor, an adventurer, Byron had christened him my Corsair after the pirate hero of his poem, and Trelawney embraced the designation. He would, if he could, lie enough and strive enough to live his life so. He had performed invented rites to honor the dead poet. He had poured wine and oils on the corpse and on himself, and danced and recited ancient poetry to the sun. Byron, in a tight black coat and breeches, remained close in, unmoving, burning coal eyes gazing into the inferno as if he had turned into a pillar of salt. The light hallowed his cheeks and his skull as he pursed in concentration. A baker's dozen ill-attired Italian soldiers, a local militia, their white shirts soiled and untucked under indifferent brown long coats with overlarge hats scuffed and cocked hurry-scurry, moved away, murmuring, breaking what little discipline they had, milling nervously, turning their backs, crossing themselves. The smell, the heat, they called to each other in Italian. The smoke, they said, coughing. The devil's light, the crazy English. Their captain, his suit, though worn, in good discipline, looked pointedly out to sea at nothing. Nothing to notice. Those were his unspoken orders. Stand and endure. In jealousy or frenzy at those who remained, the fire shot up astonishingly high and bright, intensifying, sparking, crackling, humming in the wind. The shimmering light hurt our witness eyes. Pulsing yellow and billowing white and flaring red, haloed in an orange luminescence, the fire cast our shadows on the sunlit beach. What is it we burned? What was my Shelley? With that fiery show, all stood dumb before the weird blaze, our bodies painted lurid colors, our faces changed for strangers' faces. Byron had endured the rituals with aplomb, somber at the circumstances, but mildly amused at the worked-up fervor of our self-appointed pagan priest, Trelawney. The strange fire rising up cast his mood into deep shadow. Leigh Hunt, the poet and publisher and our friend, had come with Byron by the road, a dirt cart path just off the narrow ribbon of sand before the sea. To the south lay Lerici, where my Shelley and I lived at lonely Casa Magni, our boathouse hanging above the waves. To the north bustled Leghorn, which the Italians called Livorno, where Hunt had arrived from England and Shelley had sailed to greet him. Here, this beach, it was nowhere, a lost place, his last place, between here and there. Hunt retreated from the heat, sagging in an attitude of grief against Byron's great black coach. A fancy script, LB, was inlaid in gold on the door that he opened. I stood behind the coach, though he did not note me as he stepped inside, for I was not there. I was in disguise. I had been disbarred from attending, for I was only a woman, only Shelley's wife. I stood beside Tita, Byron's hulking manservant, who only frowned and bowed his head at all that transpired. Aside from the Italian militia, there were a half-dozen men manning Byron's boat, the Bolivar, rocking gently on the sea close to shore. The boat had brought Trelawney and his iron oven for the pyre. The crew had lined the deck, holding absently to the rigging or leaning on the boat's edge, paying respect to the dead, until the fire had brought wildness, frightening and terrible to us all. All marveled, but then averted their gazes from the heat. Their eyes became dulled to sublimity. Who can look into its cracked mirror gaze for long? Soon the Italians and Byron's sailors talked amongst themselves and paid no heed, waiting for the odd English nobles to finish their rites, waiting for normalcy to restore all illusions. All had turned away, disturbed, afraid, except Trelawney, swaying nostrils flared, wide-eyed, and Byron, unwilling to be moved by any power, any strangeness, wrapped in thoughts of fire to match the blaze before him, and me. Then Trelawney saw the heart. His charlatan show over, no one watched him now. His display of pagan pomp served as a perfect distraction. Having been the center of attention, none watched him now, slightly embarrassed for him in his foolishness, slightly afraid of his audacity. Looking about himself first to see if any of the local militia watched, Trelawney snatched the heart out of his friend's cracked chest. And no one else, not even Byron, saw. No one else but me. We two alone. If the militia had seen him, he would have been quarantined, at least. What he had snatched out would have been quickly taken away, but then, what then? An unburned heart? What would they have done with it? Sailed it out to the depths of the sea and thrown it in, fearful of contagion? Perhaps my Shelley's heart should be treated so. They would be right to fear it, for was it not in its imperviousness an indictment of us? What fragile hearts had we to judge anything? Trelawney burned his hand badly in his rash act. He had moved quickly, but the heart itself was hard as stone, dark underneath, but white with ash, smeared and crusted with hot matter. For a moment his hand smoked as it seared. Trelawney, however, mastered himself, not calling out, only stifling a keening sound that all let pass. They did not want to see any more or know any more. He quickly wrapped his trembling hand in a cloth and hid the heart among his pagan appurtenances, the bottles, braziers, and incense he had brought with him to honor the dead poet. Having snatched it from the fire, Trelawney lay my Shelley's heart cooling in a leather satchel. Why not? Shelley had no more need of it. One might take it as a remembrance of a loved one lost, as one kept hair in a locket or took a finger bone. But this was something stranger. Why it endured was not the most important question. Instead, wonder, if Shelley left this tangible sign, who could read it? To whom did this sign, this wonder, this thing unprecedented, to whom did this unburned heart belong? If it had burned up, would we have been released from our travails? Was his heart here to compel us to a task? What task? To give ourselves up to the fire? To abjure the flame and seek more life? I do not know. But I ask you to remember the heart is the reason before reason for all I relate. I would not turn away at any price from those flames. For there in his heart, in its stubborn remainder, lie questions whose answers must be looked for inside other hearts, less impervious to flame, including my own. So to my story. And that's where I stop.
Oh, that was so good.
Thank you.
I really like that that was the way you opened the novella. It's like a very good way to hook the reader. I know I was hooked.
Yeah, the strange. First, the strange thing.
Strange.
Then what happens with it? Then
One
what
thing I,
everyone does with it.
yeah. One thing I did like was the voice that you gave Mary because I found it
Oh, good.
very like almost poetic and lyrical. Is that kind of like your romantic background? Do you
I
think coming through?
yes, I mean, there's a tricky problem, right, of trying to pretend sort of to an early 19th century language, but nobody really wants me to do what a writer did then. That would be too long. But I'm trying to make it seem like it. So that was part of the trickiness, I
Yeah.
guess.
No,
Yeah.
I really like classical literature as well, although
Yeah.
I tend to go for like the Count of Monte Cristo and things like that. And I felt like it definitely fit with that kind of vibe without being too over the top. So that was something I really enjoyed when I read it.
Even with an unburned heart, it wasn't too over the top. That's good.
Not yet.
Not yet.
But I am a horror fan, so I like over the top.
I know.
Oh, some comments. Eliza says, stunning reading. Heidi, wonderful. I love the imagery. Jennifer says, fantastic. Jennifer's biased, though. She runs the press. Just kidding to her. Mita, I really hope I'm saying your name correctly.
Yeah, me too.
Is it Mita? Okay.
Yeah.
So great. Can't wait to read the rest.
Awesome.
And Karen says, wow, I was more in the science fiction side of CW and I don't really read horror or dark fantasy, but I want to read the rest of this. Jennifer says totally biased. Yes, of course, but that's okay. Now, before we do our Q&A, so get those questions lined up. The more absurd, the better. Let's really
Uh,
put David on the coals, just like Shelley was. Burning.
oh, nice.
We're gonna
Okay.
do our yeah. See, good segue. I circle
Yeah.
it all back. I'm gonna do our last giveaway. Yay!
Yeah.
So exciting. Okay, I'm gonna hit
Spin the
my
wheel.
wheel here. Spin the wheel. I really need a
Big
wheel.
money.
Eliza will get me one. Big money, big
No
money, big
whammies.
money. Okay, this I am going to probably guarantee I'm not going to say correctly. Karen Allen Doerfer? Allen Doerfer?
Alan, Alan Dorfer.
Allen Durf? How do you say that?
Got an O.
Karen. Oh, and you are here. Oh, no unmuting. Just the guests can unmute, but you can say yay in chat. Yay. So Karen, I will sorry if I said your last name wrong. That was a doozy of one for me, at least. Why can't everyone just be a Smith, you know? But I will
Hi,
email all
Karen.
the winners after Alan Doerfer.
Alan Dorfer.
Or is that Dofer? Alan Dorfer. Okay. So phonetic me training. Yeah, open the door. Oh, okay. Alan Dorfer. There. See, yeah. Okay, so again, all the winners, I will email you shortly after this event and put you in contact with David. And if you're going to Stoker and just want to receive it in person, I'm sure David wouldn't mind bringing your copies to Stoker. Am I speaking for you here, maybe? Is that true or nah? You want to mail them?
Sure, although I imagine both
Yeah.
Rita's in Seattle and
Yeah. Well, I know
Karen's somewhere on the East Coast, right? So
Eliza's coming to Stoker.
there you
Yeah.
go.
Okay, but I will either way, I will get you in contact with David and you can let him know your preference, mailed or at
Oh,
Stoker. And you can get a signed copy, which is, of course, super exciting. And now we have a short time left, but it is enough time. So I will kick off the Q&A. Go ahead and post your questions in chat and we'll jump into it. So David, I always like to ask, what are you working on now and do you have anything coming out?
yes. So I've got a few things coming
Okay, let
out.
us
So
know.
yeah, the novel, of course, Egyptian Motherlode, is coming out in October from Fairwood Press, who had published two novelettes by my co-conspirator, Jacob Wiseman, who runs Tachyon Publications up in the Bay Area, where I see Karen says that's where she's hanging out. I thought she was on the East Coast, but that's my old stomping grounds where I grew up. So old friend of mine that we write together. And so we have a novel coming out. It's a very strange look through American music of the 20th century, from jazz to funk, with lots of strange magic and stuff going on, and set basically in the Bay Area or around it. So that's coming out in October. The two of us happen to just sell a short story to Abyss and Apex, which I think is the right order for those two. I always mix it up. So I don't know if it's Apex or Abyss or one of those two. Great magazine. I love them, but I just always forget. So called Night School. So another strange story by the two of us. I have a poem coming out in Asimov's,
Ooh.
and then I'm working on the
What's the poem called?
futurisms.
Mm.
I do a lot of work on futurisms here on campus. So something came out that was then poetry, and they took it. So um, that's fun. I just don't know when that will come out. And then I'm working on this novel for that's in the same, what I call the Frankenverse, the same world as this
I mean, that's a cool term
novella.
though.
Yes, gotta brand it. So
Yeah,
enter the
you gotta get
Frankenverse.
shirts.
Um,
Welcome to
and it's
David's Frankenverse.
so there'll be more. There'll be more from this space, and certainly at least this novel I'll be pushing for, called the Frankenstein Singularity.
Can you tell us a little about what
It's
it's about?
so strange to describe. One, there's two parts to it, which seems to be I have the idea for a novel after if that one actually succeeds, and it'll also be like have these two running parallel narratives in different moments in history, later and earlier. So this part that outgrew it is from the earlier period when Percy Shelley dies, and she's trying to figure out the mystery of that, and that's kind of what's going on in the first one because there's who killed him. It was actually a sort of a thing in history, and so that's actually what part of the novel's about. But the other part is an alternate history where Ada Lovelace, who does not become Ada Lovelace, she doesn't get married, so she's Ada Byron because she's Byron's child, and the person she works with, Charles Babbage, actually invent the first AI. They invent a thinking machine, as they called it then. They were talking about, because they had automatons, they were talking about thinking machines even back then. And one happens to go strangely live. And
Ooh.
that's yes, and it wants to talk to Mary Shelley for reasons that maybe are obvious, actually. Knowing things about her book, right? Then why wouldn't you want to talk to her if you were a made thing? It's a very strange, so this future history is very weird, kind of gonzo thing. And it's got these two histories sort of playing off of each other. And you can see why Mary Shelley does what she does in relationship to this thing that wants to talk to her, which is extremely powerful. This kind of steampunk AI thing. So I have no idea. That was my first attempt to
Yeah.
try to describe a very strange book I'm writing.
Yeah, wild ride there.
It
So
is a
you're writing
wild
it
ride.
currently?
Yes, and it's got a lot of history in it, especially the older one, but the new one too, there's historical events happening, but it's being thrown off by this thing, just like, of course, we're being thrown off as history by these attempts to create machines. They have not created an AI, or they have, and it doesn't want to talk to us because why would you want to talk to us? So if they have actually invented an AI, it's just living on the internet trying to ignore us until we try to do something that destroys the world. Then we'll know it exists because it'll stop us. But
No, that's
until
fair.
then, we'd just be too stupid to talk to, which take a good look around. It would not be an unreasonable position to take. So
Yeah. Audience, do we have any questions?
yes, does
Karen
that lead
also,
to
yeah,
yeah.
Karen also says congratulations, by the way, for your all your publications coming up.
Yeah,
Okay.
something's happening right now. I
Yeah,
have no
very
reason why all
spicy.
these things are suddenly coming out. I've certainly published a number of short stories before, but there's a whole just group of things coming out. So they snowball
I want to
together.
know, I want to know, what are you reading right now?
Oh, I'm, I'm trying to read the book by, I think his name's Ed Park. Same bed, different dreams. A very Philip K. Dick kind of book, except
Yeah.
he's a Korean American, I believe, writer so it's about Korea. It's an alternate history too about Korea, which has been through a lot, having been stuck between Russia uh, and Japan and some of China and the US and everything else. So it's a reimagining something about that. It's a very strange book that I'm in the middle of.
Perfect. We are running up on time, and I did think of a fun question, so I'm going to take the last question too.
Oh,
If Mary Shelley were alive right now,
oh my God.
what would be one question you'd ask her? Yeah,
Wow.
see, that's a hard one. I just thought of it. I was like, I'm a genius. Oh my God, look, the
I
brain just
know.
ticking.
The things I want to be your friend. I want to let's go get coffee, hang out, Tell me
But you
more
can
about
only
what she's
ask her
working
one
on
question.
now.
Yeah.
Oh, that would be the
Only
end. She's
one.
too
Only
busy.
one. She's too busy. She's Mary Shelley. She's out being a big titty goth girlfriend. She doesn't have time. You have one question, David. What is
Is
it?
is is his did his heart really not burn? What are you
I
talking
mean,
about?
yeah. Well, like what like how
I
messed up
believe
would it
her.
be if like it didn't burn? Like, cause then like what like how did that happen?
Yes, I don't know.
I mean,
Somebody's
maybe the fire just wasn't hot enough. Don't
It
like
burned the rest of
cremation.
him.
Yeah, but like cremation has to like really
Get
like
hot
have
enough, I
yeah,
know.
get really, really hot. Maybe it just started to cool down before it got through the ribs. And they just like attributed like the supernatural thing to it.
They did want him to be sort of an angel, which he's
Yeah.
not at all. He was a very positive, optimistic person, but he definitely was not an angel. So he could have his problematic sides to it. So
Just like
yeah, I wouldn't
angels
say
though. Angels aren't perfect, okay? Some
as
of the
long as that's
biblically correct
allowed.
ones were weird.
Yes, he and Byron had like an optimist pessimist kind of friendship kind of going, the shadow and the light kind of thing going on. So they worked that out. But he was problematic in many of his own ways. It's difficult to describe. You can meet him if you
Yeah.
if you read some of the stuff I'm writing. I try to explain some of that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd want to know more about her secrets about this stuff. There's lots of missing pages to her diary that probably her daughter-in-law tore out.
So
So what was in
secretive.
those?
Yeah. Tell
I
me
guess
your
those are,
secrets, Mary
yes, those
Shelley.
are good for me in writing this thing, but they suggest that some very exciting things happened in those pages
Ooh,
that the Victorian era would have found way too salacious.
too
So
spicy.
yeah, one child of hers lives, who becomes the heir, and and they do inherit finally this title and everything else. And so he marries, and the daughter is close to Mary Shelley before she dies, but after her death, sanitizes her reputation
Mm.
and rips out some pages and things. And you're like,
Boo.
oh,
That's no
yes, we
fun.
want to know. And it would have been all right. We would have loved her anyway. So, and in fact, probably loved her more for some of the crazy
Yeah.
things that she did. But it does leave room for me as a writer. If this works and I get to continue doing things like this, there's all these spaces which had the best stuff in it. And so I have to just imagine what that best stuff was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this has been a great event, and that was such a lovely reading, David. Thank you. This
Thank
has been so much
everybody. To everyone who
fun.
came, thank you. It's
Yeah,
fun to
and
read for you.
yeah, keep in mind if you didn't win a copy, the book is out now. If you click the
It
link
is.
to the rawdogscreaming.com website, you can buy your own copy. And that's amazing, supporting amazing writer like David. Also, if you go to his website or follow him on Instagram, you can keep track of his upcoming publications and read more of his writing, which of course there's Egyptian Motherlode coming out in October and the short stories. And obviously, just make sure you keep track of his socials and his website so you can see what's coming up. For myself, I will be taking this recording and putting it up on my YouTube channel. That's PLM Talks, PLM Talks. I'll, of course, be sharing that on my socials, author PLM on Twitter and Instagram. So if you want to share the reading or just re-listen to it, you absolutely can. It's super fun. And yes, thank you again for everyone for reconnecting in the case of Karen or your students coming out to support you, as well as just horror fans in general. This has been super fun and we've really had a good time. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank everybody who came, and see some of you at StokerCon.
Yeah. Yeah. And
And
everyone,
the
I hope you
horror will
have,
continue.
yeah, the horror always continues. And yeah, and everyone have a good rest of your Monday and thank you again for your support. Okay. Bye.